In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AMFM247.com. And joining me today as my co-host is the patriot from the Garden State, my very good friend, Anna Little. Anna, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
I'm glad to be with you, Rick.
great to have you with us. And Anna, before we get started, there is some really stunning move that has taken place out of Washington, D.C. Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy has withdrawn his candidacy for House Speaker. GOP lawmakers said McCarthy told colleagues at the start of the conference Thursday he was not the right person for the job. He recommended that the election be postponed, and Speaker John Boehner delayed it. Quote, as I have said previously, as I will serve as Speaker until the House votes to elect a new Speaker, Boehner told reporters. Wisconsin Representative Paul Ryan quickly diffused speculation that he might jump into the race. Quote, Kevin McCarthy is the best person to lead the House, and so I'm disappointed in his decision, Ryan said in a statement. Now it is important that we as a conference take time to deliberate and seek new candidates for the speakership. While I'm grateful for the encouragement I received, I will not be a candidate. I continue to believe that I can best serve our country and the conference as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Big news, Anna Little.
It is big news. I think what is happening is Republican leadership is finding that its members are pressured by the public, and the conservative-leaning public is pushing the Republican members. They are pushing the Republican members to the right, and the leadership has tried to stay center, and Kevin McCarthy's been part of that leadership, like it or not. So I think his resignation is recognition of the right-leaning public and the pressure on the members, and now they've got to look for someone that will be acceptable. I think it is an attempt to unify the party in advance of the 2016 presidential election. That's what it looks like to me.
Well, that's an astute observation. I just think that, as you said, there has been pushback. I think pushback is part of the reason Boehner is quitting. I think that pushback is part of the reason that Kevin McCarthy, he says, hey, I don't want to get in this hornet's nest. Jason Chaffetz, the Republican congressman from Utah, has announced he is a candidate for the speaker's position. This might bring out other people who want that post, Anna. It might bring out other candidates now.
It may very well. Now, remember, there was a Florida congressman who had stepped forward. I don't see any news about him at this point. The postponing of the election obviously is a statement by leadership that obviously they don't de facto want him. So let's see what goes forward. But, you know, I think it's an important recognition that the people are in charge. And I think we need to look at it and celebrate it. Look at it that way and celebrate it.
Amen to that, Anna.
Yeah.
Amen to that. So, Anna, what else is on your radar screen today?
Well, you know, I've been thinking a lot about the treatment that Ben Carson has been receiving, just in general. But even, you know, when it comes to this Oregon shooting, you know, here's Ben Carson talking about, in a hypothetical situation, what he might have done if the circumstances would put him in the same place as those victims of that Oregon shooting. And he speculated. He took the bait and he speculated. And it was such a setup for this gentleman who really is offering himself to lead the nation and has been very candid about, you know, what he would do in any circumstance posed to him. And yet here the liberal-led media has twisted his words, has criticized him as if he were criticizing the victims. It was a total setup. He was responding to an interviewer's question, which set him up for the very round of media criticism that he's receiving right now. The good news is that Ben Carson gets it. He's been asked about it, and his response has been, look, I am who I am. And he said that he believed the American people were smarter than the media thinks they are, and that they can see through what the media is doing to him, and he's just going to stand firm and be himself and continue to be candid and honest and comfortable in front of the cameras so that the American people get to know who he is as a kid. Can congratulate him more. Obviously, I'm not endorsing anybody in this whole fray, But I'm proud of Ben Carson for standing up for who he is, for calling the media out on what they do, and for having confidence in the intelligence of the American people. And those are the folks that he's trying to relate to and communicate with. I think it's great.
Indeed. Anna, another piece of news coming from Eric Erickson. Apparently, there's also a rumor out there that there may be a problem with Kevin McCarthy as far as some sort of a scandal. I'm not sure of this.
I've heard about this scandal, and it may be that scandal is truthful. I'm not sure that scandal would have stopped Kevin McCarthy from running for Speaker. I'm not sure in the Washington circles whether that scandal amounts to a hill of beans, but I know that there are folks on the social issues, on the right social issues, pro-family, pro-life folks, that are scandalized by what I believe is going around. I can't confirm it, so I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I am aware of that. I'm not sure Kevin McCarthy would have changed his mind about running for Speaker based on that information alone. I think, I honestly am going to continue to celebrate this as a recognition by Republican leadership in the House that the people are in charge, the people are pressuring the members, and everybody's going to the right. And these fellows who have been in leadership don't agree with that and have fought against that within the Republican caucus. And I think they're recognizing that it's going to be extremely controversial. There's going to be a lot of argument, a lot of confrontation within the organization as we're trying to get a president elected. And I think that's why Kevin is not running. I don't have inside information. That's just my take on it.
All right. Hey, Anna, let's take a break now, and then we can get a fresh start on the other side, getting more of your radar screen. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pun and Press, SHR Media, K-Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. Today's show, like all our shows, is brought to you by the First Amendment, protected by the Second. Anna and I will be right back.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or mornings at 9 a.m., log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com, or 1 p.m., log on to roarradio.net. You can also hear our show at any time from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. You don't need an app. You don't need to download anything. Just call 832-999-1199. Give it a try right now. And some more news coming out about Kevin McCarthy pulling out of the race for the Speaker of the House. That it's also here that he lacked the 218 votes needed to win a vote on the floor after the conservative House Freedom Caucus endorsed Representative Daniel Webster from Florida.
Yep.
So that's
there we go. So the postponing, though, the idea of postponing this means that they're not looking to have this Webster fellow. I don't know. I would like to see. You know, there were only two candidates to my knowledge, although there's another one I guess mentioned.
The two that are mentioned are Daniel Webster from Florida and Jason Chavez from Utah. Then the person who postponed the election was John Boehner. Could you take it? Could you take that Boehner postponed it because it didn't look very good for his side?
Well, I agree, but Boehner's on his way out anyway, so I'm guessing that it's folks that are going to stay that have asked him to do that, and the only hierarchy you have in existence, if you, in the face of not having elected a new speaker, is the existing speaker. So I'm not saying Boehner's forced his will here, but I don't know why they wouldn't just work with Chavez and Webster that they have there.
All right, could it be
to work with the two of them?
Could it be Chavez and Webster are conservative? They're part of this Freedom Caucus? I don't know. Do you know if Chavez is part of the Freedom Caucus?
I don't know. I think that Webster is for sure. I'm not sure about Chavez. I don't know too much about him. I've not been exposed.
Well, why don't we do this, Anna? Why don't you let our audience know who our guests are today?
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to Google the Freedom Caucus.
And see who's there.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Okay. So, listeners, we're going to have a couple of guests today that I want to tell you about. At the 3:35 segment, we're going to speak with Robert Trzcinski. He's a senior writer at The Federalist. He studied philosophy at the University of Chicago, and for more than 20 years, he's written about politics, markets, and foreign policy. He's been published in dozens of newspapers, from the Chicago Tribune to the San Francisco Chronicle, and he's been featured on many radio and television shows, from Rush Limbaugh to the O'Reilly Factor, and he's an occasional guest host of the Federalist Radio Hour and editor of the Trzcinski Letter. He's going to talk to us today about gun control, the Unconstitution. It's an article that he's written. It begins telling us about the latest attempt to politicize a shooting, has Hillary Clinton promising to impose new gun control provisions. So that sets the stage. This is what we're going to talk about with Robert Trzcinski at 3:35. And then at 4:05, we'll be speaking with Lisa Camuso Miller. She's been a notable communications leader for the past 20 years in local, state, and federal government posts, political campaigns and committees, as well as advocacy organizations. And she joins us today as a spokesperson for American Innovation Matters. AIM, AIM, is a coalition of American companies who believe that Congress must take the first step toward meaningful comprehensive tax reform by enacting changes to the tax code that will bring home American earnings from abroad and include an innovation box incentive to ensure a broad group of American companies can keep their R&D here in the U.S. So we're really looking forward to talking with Lisa Camuso Miller about that, because this is something that we need to address. So she's going to be joining us at 4:05.
All right, and in the last half hour, Anna, we're going to do something that we started a few weeks ago. We want to find out what is on our listeners' radar screen. So I'll be hearing from a couple of our listeners in the 4:30 half hour. And I did Google the Freedom Conference, and Chavez is not a member of it. So I don't see Jason Chavez as part of that, part of the Freedom Caucus.
So perhaps we should look into some of his positions and some of the votes he's had and see just about who he is.
Yes.
I'd be interested to watch any forthcoming news about other candidates, because the postponing of the election usually means they're going to go try and talk somebody else into it.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what goes on here.
Okay. Well, interesting. Anna, we've got about 5 minutes before we go to break. Anything else on your radar screen?
Well, as I said, I wanted to just continue talking about Carson for a minute.
Sure.
He's not only been criticized on these comments relating to the gun incident, the shooting incident in Oregon, and a position against gun control, and talking about what he may or may not have done. He's been criticized pretty much all along, and I think it's really significant to note, and I hope our listeners keep this in mind. Here is a man of African-American race who is running for president. The last time we had somebody of African-American race running for president, the media couldn't get enough of him, wouldn't allow him to be criticized at all. Here we have a fellow who's religious and conservative, and he's being twisted, attacked, baited, and terribly mistreated. I do think we need to expose this more among members of the public, because too many of our American brothers and sisters are working too hard right now and struggling in this economy to make ends meet, that they're not paying attention to anything but the few sound bites they get from the left-wing run media. So we've got to get it out there on social media that this is no way to treat an American who is successful, who doesn't need status, who doesn't need to be president of the United States, but who's offering himself in service to this country. This is no way. And the media ought to feel the backlash of the American public. So I'm hoping that you listeners who are already active leaders, that because you're tuning in to Conservative Commandos, I hope that you would go ahead and take that. There's enough out there just online when you Google Carson's name. But let's start putting our comments out there on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, whatever you use, whatever you haven't used recently, start using it now. Reach out and put in the minds of those users of these social media outlets on those smartphones they carry around all day. Put the thought in the mind, why is this man being treated so very differently than Barack Obama was prior to his becoming president? What's this media bias about? So, I'm hoping we can not only put those questions, but then give them the fuel, the answers, which is what we know to be true, that this media wants left-wing leaders. They don't want anybody else, and they are certainly going to skew what they tell you in order to meet that end, because the ends justify the means. So it doesn't matter if they lie to you or twist the truth, as long as they get what they want in the end. So we need to make sure we're talking about this.
And what I think the media has against Ben Carson is the fact that he's a Christian, the fact that he's a conservative, and the fact that he is successful in life. The left doesn't like that, Anna. The left does not like Christians. Okay, that Christian to them is a four-letter word today. They don't like conservative. That is a four-letter word. And God forbid we have somebody successful as president. Oh, my God. What should we do there? What are we going to do with that if we have somebody who has been successful in life, in a business life, as president? Oh, the horror of it all.
Well, I think regardless of whether Ben Carson is successful in securing the nomination of the Republican Party to run for president, he should be looked to as a role model for all of us
Indeed.
America. He was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was born into difficult circumstances. We speak now about Ronald Reagan in the same vein. And yet he has, Ben Carson he has educated himself. He has used his education to perform good for the community on a broad sense, not has innovated in his field, and he has produced results that have changed lives and will continue to change lives forever into the future. This is a role model. This is a person who puts others before himself, who believes that the gifts he's received from his Maker are to be used for his brothers and sisters. Regardless of what your religious persuasion is, you have to look up to a man who has that value system. And whether or not he becomes President of the United States, he's a role model. Yeah. We should not only look up to him, but hold him up through the abuse that he is taking right now at the hands of the left-wing media.
I agree with all that, and I just want to say, Ben Carson's not my choice when I say these things about him. You know, there's another thing that he is that the left hates, and that he's a doctor. Hey, Anna, with that, we got to take a break, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pun and Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Road Radio, and AMFM247.com. Don't go away. On the other side, we're going to be talking with Robert Trzynski about gun control. Anna and I will be right back.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show with Rick Trader and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, log on to LeadingEdgeRadioNetwork.com, or 1 p.m. also Eastern Standard, log on to ROAR, R-O-A-R, radio.net. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. This segment, our guest is Robert Trzynski, and the honor of the introduction is mine. Robert Trzynski is a senior writer at The Federalist. He studied philosophy at the University of Chicago, and for more than 20 years has written about politics, markets, and foreign policy. He's published in dozens of newspapers, from the Chicago Tribune to the San Francisco Chronicle, and he's been featured on many radio and television shows, from Rush Limbaugh to The O'Reilly Factor, and he's an occasional guest host of the Federalist Radio Hour and editor of the Trzynski Letter. We are honored to welcome Robert Trzynski to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Welcome, Robert.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for writing this titled Gun Control and the Unconstitution. Tell us what prompted you to write the article.
Well, this is in response to Hillary Clinton's vow to pursue gun control through unilateral executive or administrative action. This is by basically saying reinterpreting existing law to try to allow greater controls on gun ownership. And it was not just the fact that she made the promise, but the fact that she thought this would appeal to her base of voters. You know, this is her attempt to try to get to the left of Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And I thought, well, who would actually buy this? Who would buy into this idea, not just as a good idea to use executive power to impose gun control, but even that it's possible. And it speaks to a way in which people have become so disconnected from the Constitution that they don't even have the concept that there's a specific process, a specific means by which the government would do something like that. So they believe that, oh, sure, we can just do this by executive action. And I call that these people are what I call the unconstitution. That it's an analogy to the idea of the unchurched, which is a term used in religion for people who are not connected to any organized religion. They're not connected to a religious institution. They don't have any concept of it. this is similarly people who are, I put it, unconnected to organized government, unconnected to the idea of the government as having specific institutions, unconnected to the Constitution, so that they things that are obviously not possible, that doesn't appear to them as a problem.
Yeah, I think maybe we have become a bit removed, or at least the majority of us have become a bit removed from where we came from, how we got started. And without referring to the Constitution on a continual basis, when we talk about government, we would forget because we've gotten so far away from it over the years. I mean, even in President Obama's tenure, there have been a number of executive orders, and folks on the left supporting what those executive orders actually did really were celebrating executive orders. And it took the courts to actually indicate that those executive orders were improper and inappropriate under the Constitution, especially the last one, which he made with regard to immigration. So, I think it is an indicator that we've got a good number of people out there who think that means if the end is the goal that they want, any means will do, whether or not it's proper process and procedure. It's almost my way at all costs, which is not organized government. It's closer to anarchy. Do you have thoughts about that?
I think the foolish thing about this is everyone assumes that, if we just drop all the norms of civilized behavior, and this is, there's an interesting article I linked to in there by a liberal at Vox who's praising Hillary Clinton because she's somebody who's pushed the norms of behavior so far, and therefore she'll be able to promote the liberal agenda because she basically doesn't care about people's disapproval of what she's doing. And it's this idea that it's almost like a virtue to drop the norms of civilized behavior when it comes to government. And the thing is, people they always assume that if this happens, my gang is going to be in power and they're going to do all things that I like. That if we just remove all limits on what government can do, it'll be fine so long as my people are doing it. But what if your people aren't doing it? And, for those people, I'd say, for example, I think there is a certain purchase that this unconstitutional view of government has had on the right, which is the Trump phenomenon. I hear a lot of people who are backing Donald Trump seem to have the attitude that, what we need is to have our own strongman. We need to have our own person who go in there who doesn't care if he offends people, who's politically incorrect, who's a tough guy and a strong negotiator, and he'll do all the good things that we want that are different from what the left wants. But it's the same idea that, one person could just go in and make a lot of decrees and change everything, and not that, there's a system, there's institutions that have specific powers and specific procedures they have to go through, and that's what protects our liberty, not having the right person in office.
Yeah, I think we've got to be reminded that any single person dictating law creates tyranny and oppression. You can't have one single person's will. Even a person with the best of intentions, when given that measure of power, is corruptible. And you can't have that. That's why our founding fathers put in place this representative form of government. So I think you're 100% right.
Interesting history on that, by the way, in the American Revolution is we did not have a revolution because they didn't like monarchy. It wasn't just because they didn't like monarchy. It was specifically that George III had adopted a theory of unlimited monarchical power. The idea of absolute right, the absolutism, the idea of absolute power of the monarch. And he was trying to break down, at least in America, break down the traditional system that existed in England, where you had a monarch, but his power was shared and it was counterbalanced by other parts of the government. So it was specifically not, didn't like having an unelected leader. It was more that we didn't want a leader who had unlimited power and wasn't answerable to other parts of the government that counterbalanced that power. That was what the American Revolution was about.
Yes, it was. And I think that we've come so far away from that. I don't think anyone living today can truly personally identify with that measure of oppression. They haven't experienced it. And we haven't really experienced war on our own land since the Civil War. So I don't think folks really get it. And so therefore they start to talk about the Constitution as if it's just a crumpled old weathered piece of paper. And, it's not. It's the supreme law of the land, and it's what keeps us in a position to be able to live in freedom and therefore not know what our founders knew as far as tyranny and oppression. I've got to take us to a break right now. I'm hoping you can hold on for just 2 minutes because we're not finished with you, Robert. Can you hold on?
I sure can.
Thanks so much. Listeners, we are coming to you live from the CCRS Network Studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AM FM 24/7. And now you can listen to our show anytime on our website, CCRS Network and CCR Show. Those are all .com. We'll be right back with you after the break, speaking with Robert Trzynski and the Unconstitution.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? Listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS Studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network, and CCRShow.com. For mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, log on to LeadingEdgeRadioNetwork.com, or 1 p.m. log on to RoarRadio.net. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. We are speaking this segment with Robert Trzynski, senior writer at The Federalist. He's written an article entitled Gun Control and the Unconstitution, and we've been talking about how far we have gotten away from our founding document and the lack of experience Americans today have with the impetus that caused the founders to create our nation the way it is. And the fact that these, I guess, leaders on the left are actually talking about the desirability of stepping away from the norms of civilized government and living in the gray area of the law. And it's just a pretty scary time, right, Robert?
Well, I think so, because that really is the trend of this current administration. And now you have Hillary Clinton sort of promising to continue that. And it's the trend of saying, you know, there's a great point people have made about this, that, you know, the president isn't limited by the law. He's limited by norms. You know, that the law actually provides very few ways to stop the president from stepping outside of the bounds of power given to him by the Constitution. What usually stops it is or deters it is that people will become outraged and everybody will come down on him, and you know he'll be sort of forced politically to step back from that. And the real essence of the Obama administration has been the way that he just keeps pushing those norms and just casting them aside, and has a base of support in his party on his side of the argument that is just fine with that, as long as you're doing the things they like. You know, they rediscover the Constitution when a Republican's in office and does something they don't like. But as long as somebody's in power that they like, you know, the Constitution, its limits, those things don't exist. It's, you know, we want this, so therefore it's okay for anybody to get it by whatever means. And so it's this breaking down of those norms that is the legacy of the current administration, and we have faced the prospect that we have another administration that's going to keep on doing that.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the gun control aspect of your article, because, you know, we're talking about the founding of this nation, and the gun control is in direct opposition to the Second Amendment, which the founders put as the Second Amendment for a reason. The First Amendment, free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of the press. So Second Amendment was defend yourself with arms. And these were folks, as you correctly point out, that they had just defended themselves by creating a revolution. They were volunteers, and they did keep muskets in their homes to defend themselves against the oppressors in the middle of this revolutionary war, which then gave birth to the nation that we live in today. So obviously, for the founders, it was reality. It was understood among the victors because they had just defeated oppression in that way, and they would need to do it potentially in the future. How do we get today's society to relate to that when they haven't experienced it themselves?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think part of this is we need to have the lessons of history be drummed in. You know, that history is the proving ground for ideas about government, and every idea about big government and government providing you with everything, that's all been tested out somewhere and usually had bad results, or pretty much universally had bad results. And the issues that we fought about the right to bear arms and the right to free speech and all the political issues that we're talking about, checks and balances, those were all things that originated within a historical context where we saw the problems. The Founding Fathers seen the problems that happened if the government had too much power, and they were trying to rein it back because they had real experience of it. And the thing is, fortunately, we don't have to have all the real experience of dictatorship or absolute power in our lives today. I mean, that's the whole point of studying history, is somebody else made mistakes 200 years ago so that you don't have to. So we need to have the teaching of that history, and I think that the thing is, the left has sort of deliberately gutted the teaching of that particular kind of history. Civic, the term I can't come to my mind right now, but there used to be a lot of classes about understanding the nature of government and understanding the Constitution. They're not teaching that. If they teach the history of the Founding Fathers now, it's about who's guilty because they owned slaves. And what were the ideals of liberty that they were fighting for, and what were the experiences that were pushing them towards that? The left sort of needs to. The left wants to do a fundamental transformation of America to a socialist system. away from a capitalist system. To do that, they have to sort of discredit or delegitimize the existing system. And so part of the way they do that is by not teaching what was good about America and the way that we achieved freedom here, and instead trying to sort of make all of America's past look like it was awful up until the left came along to civilize us by introducing big government. That's sort of their attitude there. That's the way they like to present history, and it leaves no room for the knowledge that we would have to have in order to understand why our system works the way it does and why that's so important. But also I think the thing is the left has the motive of saying they regard government as a big black box that gives you good things. So if there's any kind of problem in the world, we just pass a law and government will solve all of your problems for you. So they don't really think about the practicalities of how to solve these problems and what causes them and how it's really going to work. So they also don't think about the procedure you have to go through.
As if the public, as if society is filled with incapable children, and the government therefore needs to do for them. And that's I think what is so counter to how this country was formed. I mean, obviously, the occupying force prior to the revolution treated citizens here on this soil as incapable and therefore having to provide and therefore restrict and therefore regulate to the extreme. And it was the uprising and the fighting of the revolution that proved that differently. And I guess we just are so far removed because we've lived in peace and prosperity for so very long. I mean, we talk about suffering under an economy. I don't think anybody's starving. I mean, it's really, we don't know the extremism that can be. Can we learn anything from Germany? I know they had a period of economic downturn. They had instability. They looked for a strong leader in Adolf Hitler. And then we had this dictator. And then we saw what came of that with the Holocaust, which, of course, the Jews remind us of, and they say never forget and never again. And it wasn't limited to just the Jews. I mean, he really did follow what kind of people were okay and who was not. And some of it was based on your features, your physical features. Some of it was based on your abilities and what was needed in his mind. I mean, it was really quite extreme and fanatical and scary. Can we learn anything from that? Can we use that?
Well, I certainly think we can, but there's also a lot of things going on in the world right now which are sort of cautionary tales. I think right now what's going on in Europe is in the middle of a sort of a long, slowly unfolding economic crisis, and it all came from adopting a extremely generous welfare state. I did a look at this, and it's interesting that the epicenter of the economic crisis in Europe recently has been Southern Europe, and a lot of these countries, Greece, for example, they didn't have a really big welfare state until about 30 years ago. And then socialists got elected to power, and they created a very generous welfare state. And it immediately led to economic problems. The old problem with socialism, you always run out of other people's money to spend. They ran out of they taxed everybody so much, they ran out of other people's money to spend. They couldn't afford the welfare state. The euro came in and sort of papered over all of that for a while because they were basically able to use the German credit card, use Germany's credit rating to borrow a lot of money to paper over that for about 15 years. And then, but after a while, that doesn't work anymore, and the whole thing crashes down worse than it would have otherwise. So you have this 30-year process of expanding government, having huge runaway government costs, financing it all with unsustainable debt, and then having the whole thing come crashing down. So there are all these, these lessons to be learned just from looking around today. I would also look at, we've had, fortunately, I think people are perhaps getting a little bit of the message about things like the Obama stimulus. We had an economic downturn. The Democrats came into power and said, we're going to have a giant stimulus bill. We're going to spend, hundreds of billions, $1 trillion to stimulate the economy. And all that money just sort of disappeared and had no impact at all. And so we have had some, real lessons in real time about the dangers of this idea that government can just give you whatever you want. And I think we're going to have to, but the lesson I think we're going to have to learn first and foremost is this lesson about constitutionalism, that we've had too many laws which consist of basically telling the government you're authorized to vaguely good-sounding thing like secure clean air or provide affordable health care. And then when it comes to actually implementing that, it's, the law doesn't really mean anything. It's endlessly reinterpreted and expanded and changed depending on the needs of the moment. That's how Obamacare has been implemented. And it ends up giving the government this sort of unlimited power to intrude in all sorts of different things. And they never actually achieve the goal that they're supposed to be achieving, like affordable health care. It gets more expensive. But, you've given government this unlimited grant of power to do whatever it likes. And I think we're going to start seeing the result that the government has more and more ability just to dictate to us all the little details of our life and have this unaccountable power over us. And that's the lesson we're going to have to learn, and the thing that we're going to have to reverse, and how we're authorizing the government to do things.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I just want to bring up that I've been looking while you're talking at George Santayana, who was a philosopher and essayist, poet. He actually said, and he's quoted often, that fanaticism consists in redoubling your efforts when you've forgotten your aim. And I think you're alluding to that's where we are right now with those unconstitutions who would lead this particular government, which is obviously formed under the Constitution. How confusing can that be? He is also known for saying that those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So we'll do our part here at Conservative Commandos as we tell everybody that we're brought to you by the First Amendment and protected by the Second. Robert Trzcinski, thank you for writing your article. Remind our listeners where they can follow your work and keep in touch with you on this and other important issues.
Try thefederalist.com, and also my own newsletter, Trzcinski Letter, which you don't have to learn how to spell Trzcinski. Just go to tskiletter.com, tskiletter.com.
Thank you so very much. We've been speaking with Robert Trzcinski. Come back and visit us again soon, Robert.
My pleasure.
Listeners, you are listening to Conservative Commandos radio show with Rick Trader and Anna Little. We are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, AM/FM 24/7, and now you can listen to our show anytime on our website, CCR and CCR Show. Those are all.com. Rick Trader and Anna Little will be right back with you on Conservative Commandos after the break.
They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, CCRShow.CCRSnetwork.com. Or mornings at 9 a.m., you can log on to LeadingEdgeRadioNetwork.com, or at 1 p.m., log on to RoarRadio.net. And if that's not good enough for you, you're not near a computer or a radio, try your telephone. You can hear our show any time of the day by calling 832-999-1199. And a little, we have our next guest. Please make the introduction.
I am pleased to do so. Listeners, this segment we're going to be speaking with Lisa Camuso Miller. She's a notable communications leader for the past 20 years in local, state, and federal government posts, political campaigns and committees, as well as advocacy organizations. She joins us today as spokesperson for American Innovation Matters. AIM is a coalition of American companies who believe that Congress must take the first step toward meaningful comprehensive tax reform by enacting changes to the tax code that will bring home American earnings from abroad and include an innovation box incentive to ensure a broad group of American companies can keep their R&D here in the United States. This purpose is music to my ears. Lisa, welcome to Conservative Commandos radio show.
Anna, Rick, thank you both so much for having me.
So talk to us. How did AIM come into existence?
Well, I think in the past we've had conversations about this issue, especially as it relates to keeping American companies competitive here at home and with their international counterparts, right? So the challenge here today is that a lot of countries overseas are changing their laws so they can tax a greater percentage of the earnings that American companies generate overseas. So plenty of our U.S.-based plenty of our U.S.-based companies have facilities overseas where they produce and they sell and they can make money on the U.S. Business that they put together. So the challenge here now is that a key part of the effort on the side of the other countries is that during these negotiations, they're trying to complete by the end of the year to capture more tax revenues for other countries. And many of those policies are designed to push American companies to move their R&D and resources and jobs to those countries and not keeping them here at home in the U.S., which this group especially is concerned about action. And they feel like, as much as we're all for comprehensive tax reform, we know that the only way to get to a comprehensive plan is to have a stable corporate base here at home in the U.S. And so that's why we feel like this is a very important time, very important, critical time for us to do this before other countries make it difficult for U.S. companies to be competitive.
You know, I think some of the difficulty we have with convincing the public that our tax code is a problem is because of the way the tax code is written. I mean, it's not simple to understand, and it's very difficult to see what the actual percentage of tax is that's being levied against any individual or any corporation. Your article entitled American Competitiveness Could Get Much Worse Without Congressional Action, and it's an opinion piece from American Innovation Matters, which you've written, Lisa. It starts to address that issue. Talk to us about your article.
Sure, Ann, I'm so glad you brought that up. Before I get to the article, I want to highlight one specific point that you made that is so important. It was just last week that the Tax Foundation ranked the United States number 34 out of 36 countries for competitiveness. So the 36 biggest countries that are competitive and competing and trading in the global markets, we're number 34 of 36. That's impossible to believe that the United States could be that low. And so our terrible position there is a direct reflection of the 35% corporate tax rate that we have in this country. Businesses can't compete internationally when our own government is making it difficult and taking away a third of the earnings for those companies. So the challenge there alone is very, very difficult.
Well, we've got this left-wing media telling us corporations are bad and they're stealing money from the labor force. I mean, that doesn't help either, does it?
Well, it certainly doesn't. This certainly doesn't at all. I mean, there's no question about that. And it's remarkable to me how that has been structured in a way through the media. I mean, it's our high tax rates here at home that have led to $2 trillion in American capital that's being held hostage overseas. So that $2 trillion is sitting on foreign shores because companies know what the U.S. penalty will be if they bring that money back home. And so American earnings are now being looked at by other countries in a way for them to get revenue. So money that has been made by U.S. countries that those companies want to bring home to strengthen and bolster the U.S. economy are sitting overseas right now, and other countries are looking at that money as a possibility for them to get a cash grab. And so we really think that that's a tragedy. We think that that's unfair, and we think that in order to attract innovative companies here at home, that we think that there needs to be what's called an innovation box, a way to inspire and encourage innovation here at home, tax policies that will allow for more development here in the United States. Because if we don't do it, guess who else is already working on it? All those other countries overseas.
Yeah, and the same folks who will talk about corporations as if they're big and evil and stealing money from the labor force, those are the ones that are also complaining that their jobs are being outsourced overseas, and so therefore they're not able to work here in the United States in those positions, that they're being replaced by immigrants, or worse, the job is being moved out of the country to a labor force that is able to be, I guess, less expensively administered financially, and therefore the investment turns a greater profit if the workforce is outside the country. So, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this.
There's no
that's
question.
why I'm so glad
Such a
we
good
have you
point.
on the show. We're so glad you've written your article, and I'm glad that AIM exists, because we've got a big job in getting the average American to understand all of this.
And I think they do. I really do. I think they understand. I mean, it's certainly in states like Michigan and in Ohio, where they saw what happened when the trade rules changed and when jobs went overseas. The ability to find a U.S. job here at home that's a good paying, profitable job, a job that would support families and support that local economy, those went away. And so what our specific coalition is focused on and very much want to make sure happens in the very near term, right now, as soon as possible, it's important to do that, because you're absolutely right, Anna. We can't have any jobs. We can't have these jobs go overseas. And these companies, the companies that are members of our coalition, are committed to keeping those jobs here at home. But the tax rate has got to change. We have done everything. This is the country of innovation. This is the country that has, I mean, we provide dreams. I mean, this is the American dream, right? To develop and build and innovate. And we are number 34 out of 36 in the countries today. That's kind of a woeful number to be looking at.
Unbelievable. So, we talk about fixing the tax code, and there are folks out there serving in public office today that'll say, oh, we can't be that drastic. This is the way our government has operated for forever, and, our tax, we fund government, and if you mess with that funding, well, then big government won't be here to save you when you have your problems. I mean, these are the opponents, right, to tax reform. So tell me, if we're going to address fixing this tax code, is there some way to do it incrementally? Does it have to be done all at once? What is AIM's position with regard to that reform?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Anna. Look, broader, comprehensive tax reform is needed. We need it. But it may not be possible if the United States doesn't take steps right now to stabilize its corporate tax base. And so Chairman Paul Ryan, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, believes that international tax reform is the first step towards that broader tax reform. With President Obama in the White House, comprehensive tax reform package isn't likely to happen until 2017. So that big piece, that big package that we all really want, may not happen right away. So if nothing is done to address international tax reform before then, before 2017, billions of dollars of American capital will be lost to foreign governments. And R&D investments and jobs will have already moved overseas. I mean, this upheaval will make a comprehensive overhaul of our corporate tax system even more difficult.
Yeah, because whenever we're suffering, government suffers too, and so we have to be really careful, I guess, about trying to pit government against the taxpayers. Government has no money unless the taxpayers give it over. So if you're struggling, your government's struggling too.
Hey, ladies, can I jump in for a minute? Lisa, I wanted to talk to you. Regardless of what happens in Congress, anything that gets passed through Congress has to have an Obama signature, unless you can get two-thirds of the Senate to go along with this. How do you anticipate doing something like that?
Well, Rick, I think that if a smart, and the other thing we've heard is that there are thoughtful Democrats that understand that international tax reform has to happen, and they're folks that do have the ear of the president. What I'm saying is that comprehensive tax reform will never happen with him in the White House, but we could potentially get that first piece done, that international tax reform piece done, with the support of Paul Ryan as the chairman of Ways and Means, with some other more thoughtful Democrats who understand that this absolutely has to happen to keep America competitive. And so there is still a possibility that this international piece, this first piece of the puzzle, could get solved.
Okay.
If Paul Ryan puts forth this program. And so we're anticipating that could very well happen in the short term. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this comprehensive package that many in Washington are pushing for, they'll do that before 2017, before we have a new...
Can we wait till 2017? I mean, by 2017, is the water already over the dam?
Well, I hope not.
I hope not, too. I'm don't mean to be wise or ridiculous by asking that question, but I hope the water is not over the dam by then. Hey, Lisa, we got to take a quick break. Could you hold on for just 2 minutes while we do a station identification? Okay, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AMFM247.com. Our guest this segment is Lisa Miller. She is with American Innovation Matters. Don't go away. We're talking about corporate tax rates. Be right back.
They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. Or morning at 9 a.m., log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com, or at 1 p.m. you can hear a rebroadcast of our show at www.roarradio.net. You can also hear our show from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Our guest this segment is Lisa Miller. She represents American Innovation Matters, and AIM is a coalition of American companies who believes that Congress must take the first step towards meaningful, comprehensive tax reform by enabling changes to the tax code that will bring home American earnings. Lisa, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
You bet. I'm glad to be back.
Well, we're great. We're glad to have you. And you outlined in your article how the United States corporate tax rate is 35%, the highest among developed nations. We also have a figure in here. You say that more than $2 trillion of American capital is now being held overseas thanks to our country's punitive corporate tax rate. Lisa, $2 trillion. I actually think that's a conservative estimate. I've heard figures that might be much higher, that there are as much as $13 trillion American money that's overseas. Am I wrong here?
Well, the number we have, Rick, is $2 trillion. But if it's $2 trillion or $13 trillion, it's too many trillion to be not here at home.
And Lisa, when I look at these figures, I think about the things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership compared to what breaks in the corporate tax rate would mean for American jobs and American manufacturing. Oh, it was so important to Obama to get this TPP passed, but at the same time, wouldn't there be greater benefit by adjusting the tax code?
Without question. Without question. And just earlier this week, the OECD, which is the Economic Cooperation and Development Group, announced what they're calling a base erosion and profit sharing project. Those are a lot of words. Here's what it does. Basically, countries will use the concepts that they proposed this week, change their own tax laws, and begin levying new and greater taxes on U.S. businesses. Foreign governments are already acting. So we can wait around and we can wait for something to happen, or we can act. And it's time to act. I mean, there's no question about it. And, the other nations, they'll be adopting pro-growth tax policies like an innovation box. While we sit by and debate whether or not we ought to do it, other countries are already doing it. So U.S. companies are going to suffer. And by default, that means U.S. jobs, U.S. economy, and otherwise. We got to move, and it's time to move now. I mean, we have to get better on our tax code has got to improve.
I agree with that. Lisa, what about other tax plans like the flat tax or the fair tax? I'm a great believer in the fair tax, so I'd love to see it enacted in my lifetime. Hope they hurry up with that one. But how do those plans compare with the corporate tax rate plan? Can they be? Do you see if there was something like a flat tax or a fair tax that the corporate tax rate would totally go out the window or be for instance, Herman Cain with his 999 plan, didn't he, when he lowered the corporate tax rate to 9%?
Yeah, and I think that all of that, I mean, every single one of those examples remind us that the United States has been uncompetitive because it's got the highest corporate tax rate in the world. It's out of date. It's an out-of-date international tax system that has now made it so difficult for us to be competitive with other countries. I mean, China, think about all the countries that are eating our lunch right now because we have a tax code that's out of date. It's got to get fixed, right? So the lack of incentives for placing innovation here in the United States is forcing us to have other countries right now that are more competitive. That's not the U.S. way. That's not the way we are as a country, as by the fabric that we're put together by. So we've got to fix it, and we've got to fix it now. And so, Rick, whether it's a flat tax or a corporate tax or an incremental, all of those, all they tell, each and every one of those show me that it's crystal clear that on both sides of the aisle, specifically smart, conservative, thoughtful leaders like Chairman Paul Ryan, know that we have to address this issue and know that it has to happen because we have to continue to make the U.S. the place for innovation and the place for the most competitive opportunities on the globe.
And with that, Ann, I'll swing it back to you.
Well, I'd like to talk about what we can do. And before the break, you had talked about starting with international tax reform, because comprehensive tax reform may not be possible under this president. And you stated in response to Rick's question that you might have some Democrats who actually understand that international tax reform is necessary. So are there any specific actions that our listeners could get involved with today to try to assist AIM in this lobbying effort and perhaps accomplish this goal?
Well, I think the first thing that they can do is be in contact with their member of Congress and let them know that they support the idea of international tax reform. And that, more than anything, is the first step. I mean, let's face it, Washington has had a hard time getting any comprehensive anything done. The last thing that they did that was comprehensive was Obamacare, and we all know how that played. The truth of it is that if we have to be incremental, let's get it right. Let's start with the piece that the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, who we all know to be a smart and thoughtful leader, has said needs to get done in order to establish a strong corporate base. As part of that tax reform package, AIM believes that an innovation box that's similar to what's being adopted by other countries is also important. It's an opportunity to make U.S. companies available to, from manufacturers to high tech, to keep their research investments here in the United States. International tax reform is a good first step in fixing this outdated and, quite frankly, broken tax system here in the United States. We have got to get it right. So the first step would be for your listeners to join us online. We'll share with you. I don't have it right here, and it's going to be long, but I'll share it with you so you can have the link to our Facebook page. Like us, join us, follow us on Twitter. We've got those 2 links, and I'll send them over so you all have them. Join us in the conversation. Be part of that conversation with us. When you see your member of Congress, when you see your local elected officials, tell them international tax reform has to get done because we need to keep U.S. jobs here at home. That, I think, is probably the most important point today.
Okay, so listeners, that means you need to be looking for American Innovation Matters, or AIM. Now, you said it was Facebook and also on the web?
Facebook and Twitter.
Facebook and Twitter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking for American Innovation Matters on Facebook and Twitter, AIM, and get in touch with your congressperson and let them know international tax reform is a good first step and you support that, right?
That's right, Anna. Thanks.
Yeah, because our listeners are doers and they're leaders in their own right. So come on,
I know
listeners.
that they are.
All right, so tell our listeners where they can follow you, Lisa. They want to stay in touch with you. They want to read articles that you've written. So where can they go to do that?
I love that. Well, I'm on Twitter at Camuso Miller. So the @ symbol spelled afterwards CAMOOSOMILLER. And I'm on Twitter, and I'm doing the best I can to stay involved in this debate. It's an important and critical debate, and I'd love to have them join me on that great platform to talk about the issues.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Lisa, for spending this time with us today on Conservative Commando's radio show. We hope to have you come back soon.
Thanks so much, Anna and Rick. I really appreciate the time today.
Okay, listeners, we were speaking with Lisa Camuso Miller. She is with American Innovation Matters, AIM, and they are American companies who believe Congress has got to take forward tax reform. That's international tax reform is their first focus. And we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. And now you can listen to our show anytime on our website, CCRS Network and CCR Show. They are all.com. Rick Trader and Anna Little will be right back with you on Conservative Commandos after this break.
See, I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired as I am about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back. Welcome back for the last half hour of the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and yours truly, Rick Trader. For rebroadcast, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. ccrsnetwork.com also has information on the great new conservative programming here on WNJC 1360 as part of the Conservative Commandos radio show. And Anna, we've started something a couple of weeks ago. I really like how it's going, and we're giving our listeners a voice. Our loyal listeners, we're kind of using them as our correspondents. Find out what's on their mind. And the first one is with us, Nancy. Nancy, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Good to be here.
Great to have you with us, Nancy. What's going on, kid? What's on your radar screen?
Well, I wanted to chat a little bit about this whole Speaker of the House.
Oh, boy, am I glad you're bringing this up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Well, as you know, McCarthy has withdrawn.
Yes.
And so that leaves the field wide open. I have a couple of questions. If Jason Chavez and the other guy from Florida, Webster, were still in the race, why did they feel the need to postpone the vote?
Why? I personally think they decided to postpone the vote because of Boehner. Boehner maybe he's thinking he doesn't want to let go of the control of the House now. Maybe that's one reason. Another reason is maybe so they could line up their candidates. But Nancy, I have some information on you as far as Jason Chaffetz goes, and also on Webster, the guy from Florida who's running. First of all, Anna and I just got this from Grover Norquist at Americans for Tax Reform, and I'd like to let you know about this, Nancy. Please. The internet is the politicians' playground for new taxes. Lawmakers are always looking for ways to tax people who can't vote against them. Enter the remote transition parlay tax, introduced by guess who? Representative Jason Chaffetz. It's a new internet sales tax scheme that takes advantage of the taxpayer.
Boy, Nancy, am I glad you brought that out. I'm really glad you brought that out. Where can readers find that information?
Well, this comes from Americans for Tax Reform. Okay. You go to their website, Americans for Tax Reform, and I'm sure you can find out all about it. But this is Jason Chaffetz, the guy who...
Unbelievable. I thought he was one of the good guys.
Well, maybe not so much, Nancy, and maybe we the people, need to let this guy know. I also have some other information about Daniel Webster. Okay. I went to Heritage Action that rates the congressman as far and gives them a conservative rating. Uh-huh. This is a Heritage Action scorecard, and according to that, Jason Chaffetz has an 81% conservative rating. Daniel Webster has a 77% conservative rating. Compare that with McCarthy, who just pulled out. He had a 61% conservative rating. Paul Ryan has been mentioning this. Of course, he says he's not a candidate anymore. He has a 57% conservative rating. So I invite our listeners to go to heritageactionscorecard.com, and they can find out how Heritage Action feels about the members of the Congress and with their conservative rating. So
that's really good information, and I'm going to be doing that. And there's a couple of points that you brought out that just very well may be. As you know, Boehner was supposed to withdraw at the end of this month.
Right.
Now he's saying he's not going to, and well, he says not until we elect another speaker. But I mean, if the
in the meantime, election, it's like you mentioned. In the meantime, he postponed the election.
Right. So I do have, and I'm not sure how many of these are in, but I know that somebody mentioned Representative Tom Price from Georgia, Jim Jordan from Ohio.
Jim Jordan, by the way, has an extremely high rating with Heritage Action. I think it's like 99%.
That is awesome. Boy, I'm going to find out more about him.
And again, log on to this, heritageactionscorecard.com.
What's it called again?
heritageactionscorecard.com.
I'm writing that down. Excellent. heritageactionscorecard.com. Also, somebody mentioned Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington. So I guess the field is opening up, and we'll see what happens.
96% for Jim Jordan.
Wow, excellent. Boy, that's about as high as you can get.
Well, no, you can get 100%. There's somebody here that has 100%.
Who's got 100? I want to know that.
Well, just a second, Nancy, and I'll tell you that.
I also Representative Raul Labrador of Ohio, Representative Pete Roscom of Illinois.
Roscom's pretty high, I think. Who has 100? Representative Ken Buck, who's been from Colorado, who's been a guest here on Conservative Commandos.
Amazing, from Colorado.
From Colorado. David Brett, 95%. Our friend Louis Gohmert, 95%. Jim Bridenstine, 94. Sensenbrenner, 94. Hills Camp, 92. Paul Labrador from Idaho, 92. But he's soft on immigration. Jason Amish from Michigan, 91. Anna, I didn't mean to ignore you. Any thoughts on this, Anna?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. I mean, I think at this point, the postponing of the vote is an action on behalf of the organization at this point. I'm celebrating the fact that McCarthy recognized the people are in control, and I think that the right-leaning nature of the people in general is leading them to push their representatives to the right. So I do think as conservatives, we should be pleased with this. I think the challenge to conservatives right now, and Nancy, I guess you're taking the challenge, is to find out who's where on their votes and to get behind somebody, Speaker of the House at this point. Because I think what the organization needs to do is pull everybody together in the face of this presidential election that's coming forward. And what you don't want is to have a third-party candidate running and put the liberals back in power, which is too often what happens, a la Ross Perot, for example. So I think that's where we're going here, and I think what we've got to do is all get busy and start getting behind some folks and convincing some folks. If you find somebody like this Representative Ken Buck of, I think it's Colorado, who has 100% on the Heritage Action Scorecard, give the man's office a call, even if you don't live in Colorado, and say, listen, you are 100% on Heritage Action Scorecard. I'm a conservative. Would you consider running? Put the idea in these fellows' heads that maybe there's somebody in the nation that wants to see them go forward. Because, see, this vote is not limited to their constituency. It's a nationwide vote. The representatives get to vote, so you get to call your rep and say, vote for this guy. You know, it's kind of a chance for us. That's my thought.
Hey, what we're going to do, ladies, is I'm going to put the link to Heritage Action up on our Facebook page. So please go to the Conservative Commandos Facebook group page. If you're not a member, join, by the way. But we have this link up here through the Heritage Action Scorecard. Again, it's Conservative Commandos Radio Show public group. Ask you to please log on to it, request to join. I'll nominate you. Nancy, we got to run for a break, but I want to thank you so much, Nancy. Great call, kiddo.
Great. Thanks so much, Rick. Keep up the great work, you guys.
Take care. God bless.
Bye-bye.
You are listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, Pioneer Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Ruhr Radio, and AMFM247.com. Going to check in with a couple more of our listeners right after the break. Don't go away.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm messy, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night at Concord Bridge in Trenton. for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today, the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, and for rebroadcast of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. You can log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, or at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, you please log on to roarradio.net. You can also hear our show any time of the day from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. My co-host today is Anna Little, and we have another one of our listeners with us, Lou. Lou, welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us, Lou. What's on your radar screen today?
Oh, what's on everybody's radar screen? McCarthy?
McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a friend of mine actually predicted that this was going to happen. Not real sure how he knew. What do you think messed him up? Was it the Benghazi comment?
Well, you know, there's a lot of speculation out there, Lou. I guess yours and mine and Anna's is as good as anybody. Some say there's some sort of a rumor that he was having some sort of an affair. I kind of think that maybe he looks at this and he sees the conservative branch of the Republican Party endorsing somebody like Daniel Webster. Maybe he's getting a lot of phone. I hope he's getting a lot of phone calls and opinions.
Yeah,
people expressing their
opinions. Mark Meadows gave a little shot across the bow last night, and I think that you know, being from North Carolina, just that's a don't just not mess with Texas. Don't mess with Tar Heels either.
What I didn't hear what Meadows said. What did he say?
Well, and this was what I was told today, and I actually looked it up on the news, and I couldn't find it before I came on air, so I apologize for that. But the word was that Meadows put out a statement that if you have any moral issues, that you should reconsider.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because they dig and find them.
Okay. Well, maybe.
That was what I heard.
Yeah. Lou, before we were talking with Nancy and Anna and myself, we were talking about the Americans for Tax Reform government organization just put out a press release, and I don't know if you heard it while you were on hold, but it says the internet is a politician's playground for new taxes. Lawmakers are always looking for ways to tax people who can't vote against them. Enter the Remote Transitions Parlay Act, introduced by Representative Jason Chaffetz. It is a new internet sales tax scheme that takes advantage of the taxpayer. Wanted to get your take on that. Coming introduced by Jason Chaffetz, who's running for speaker.
And the running for speaker.
Yes.
I think that's really interesting, and people really have to think when when things like this are going on. They get their congressman's phone number, give them a call, let them know what you think about taxes and the speaker, and remember the great economy that we had when Newt Gingrich was speaker, because he was not really a tax and spend speaker, and that's where a lot of the spending comes from, is the House.
Well, Lou, another thing I want to remind our listeners about: you do not have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House.
All I have to say to that is Lou for Speaker.
I'm sorry, Lou for Speaker. All right, I'll vote for you.
Sure, I'll do.
All you have to be is you have to be a United States citizen, 35 years of age. You have to have the same qualifications as qualifications for president, because the Speaker of the House is third in line for the presidency, but they do not have to be a member of the House. Anna, this didn't we elect a Republican House of Representatives, a Republican Senate, because we wanted to stop crazy stuff like this?
Yeah, I think we did. But, you have to remember that there's something in that Beltway water. and once folks have a sip, it's just kind of... That's why the people have to stay in touch with our representatives. We can't be in charge if we're not talking to them. So you can't sit home and grumble and complain. You've got to get on the phone, get on the email, and go ahead and say your mind to these representatives. And sometimes, in the case of this nationwide election, within the Republican caucus of the House, you might need to call to somebody out of district and tell them what you think. And that's why I'm saying, if you take a look at Heritage Scorecard, and you see somebody who's got a 100% rating or a 90-something% rating or even an 85% or higher rating, you ought to pick up the phone and make a call and say, would your office consider putting this guy up for speaker, because he's conservative and I'm a conservative, and I'll tell my guy to vote for him if your guy will run. Sometimes you just have to do that. And in this day and age, with technology being as open as it is, I think we are in a position where we can actually do that.
Anna, you and I both have a very good friend that's in the House of Representatives that happens to have a 95% rating from Heritage Action. Representative Louis Gohmert. Now,
I think Louis Gohmert would make Speaker of the House, and I've said so to him directly, face to face.
What's his response? I know in the past he actually nominated or wanted to nominate Alan West as Speaker.
I think Alan West would have been a wonderful speaker.
I did too.
But Alan West isn't in the Congress right now.
Well, he doesn't have to be. You don't have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. You just have to.
That's the best idea I've heard.
Yeah, you just have to be an American citizen, 35 years of age. It's the same qualifications as anyone to run for president. 35, an American citizen. Hey, Lou, I understand from some of our mutual friends that you happen to have your own radio show. Could you tell our listeners a little about it?
I will. I'm on Red Nation Rising Radio, actually, on Thursday nights on K98 at 8 p.m. And it is part of a nonprofit that is also a hashtag on Twitter, hashtag Red Nation Rising. And we're just really about moving the country in that direction, back in that direction of the constitutional republic that Mr. Franklin gave us, but never believed we could really keep it for that long.
Well, let's hope
we'd like to prove Mr. Franklin wrong.
I hope we can keep this as a republic for a long, long time. Lou, when again is your show?
8 p.m. Thursday nights, K98 Talk.
K98 Talk. Lou, I want to thank you for joining us on Conservative Commando's radio show.
Thanks so much, Rick. Have a great night.
Take care. God bless. Anna, we have to wrap things up. And I do want to thank our guests today. I want to thank Lisa Miller and Robert Terzinski for being our guests. And I want to thank you for sitting in as my co-host. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess get on the stick, make your phone calls, whether it's a Congress representative or not. We need to choose the Speaker of the House. We're being given this chance. We got to take it.
Okay, and again, please go on to Facebook. Go on to our Facebook group page, Conservative Commandos Radio Show, and we have this link to Heritage Action Scorecard out there that you can go on there and you could see how Heritage Action rates each member of Congress as far as their conservative views and opinions and how they vote. I want to thank Mr. John Forsyth Jr. for doing a great job working the boards for us. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Hi, folks. I'm Doug Driesel.
And Blaine Davis.
President Barack Obama. Get him out of here. But if you want your conservatism served up with a side of country comedy, then Doug and Blaine Explain the Game is for you. Coming to you from America's heartland, beautiful Cherokee Village, Arkansas, and Lake Paradise. Don't be fooled, folks. Both sides have their flaws, and Doug and Blaine Explain the Game will teach you how to get through this political season. Join us Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Tell them, Bill.
Doug and Blaine Explain the Game. I wish they wouldn't do that.
The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.